Hi, my name is Dr. Richard Ford, and I'm the Chief Scientist at ForcePoint. That's a fun job. It's about as much fun as it sounds, actually, because in that role, what I do is I look at what's sort of over the next horizon. We're looking a little bit further out ahead of our engineering roadmaps, trying to figure out where we're going to be in the next few years, figuring out where the attackers are going, and make certain that we can stop them before they get there.
So what's something that's really, you're reading a lot about cyber espionage and corporate sabotage today. Like, what's going on with that, and how is it different today versus, let's say 20 years ago?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think 20 years ago, if I wanted to steal, say, the company's crown jewels, it was like a Grisham novel and an adventure in photocopying, right? So you'd be sneaking large chunks of paper out of the front door of the company. Now, stealing everything a company has can be as simple as a couple of point and clicks. More to the point, employees are used to getting whatever data they want, whenever they need it, on any device at all. So it's become very difficult for the CISO or the security team to protect the data that the system has. I think in an economy that's become much more of an information economy as well, the value of that data and the ease of access has sort of created this perfect storm where it becomes quite tempting sometimes for an employee, a good employee gone bad, to potentially steal something very valuable and very damaging from the company. And I think when we talk about sabotage or espionage, especially in the commercial world, those are some real risks that we've enabled by making it easier to access data.
So what are some interesting cases that you've been following lately? I know that there's something with GE and turbine technologies, Tesla, Coke. What are some of your favorites that have happened recently?
Well, I'm not certain favorites is ever the right word to use when we talk about things that have gone badly wrong, potentially to another company or with another company. But I think the one that's most interesting to me was a court case that's been filed and is actually still ongoing. So this is pending litigation, so you can put the word allegedly in front of everything I'm about to say. But there's an interesting case where a GE engineer is accused essentially of theft of trade secrets. And what's interesting is it was work that he supposedly used every day that was then, taken, converted, encrypted, used steganographically attached to an image and then sent out to the company. At least that's what the, accusation is. Obviously, some of these facts are in dispute. But in the hypothetical, it's very difficult to protect IP from the person that uses it every day. And the reality is that, who's the most likely person to steal your customer database? The salesperson that works with your customer database every day. Who's the most likely person to steal the innovations that are coming out of ForcePoint? Well, that would be me, one of the innovators inside of ForcePoint. So detecting that I or that salesperson is doing something untoward with data that we already touch and manipulate every day is very difficult. That's a challenge, but it's also the biggest point of risk or exposure. And so that's the reason why that case is interesting to me, because it's, somebody technical allegedly stealing technical data, right? That's interesting.
Now, what about outside the office? You hear a bit about, phishing and social engineering and that, executives can be targeted. Is that a real thing?
Yes. So, as much as I don't like to think of the world this way, we essentially all walk around with a target on our backs at all times. Think about just your cell phone. You're getting calls probably multiple times a day now that there's a non-revocable, non-bailable warrant out for your arrest unless you give your credit card number over to somebody, which, pushes the bounds of credibility. But some people obviously fall for it, or that scam wouldn't happen. So yeah, you're a target as an individual, just as sort of random backscatter, of threat. But the more senior you are in an organization, the more you can be targeted by somebody who recognizes that you may have, for example, payment authority over invoices. So the concept of business email compromise, or invoice falsification or manipulation has started to rise in popularity. So yeah, executives should expect to get spearphished. Executives should expect to get requests that are not from, who they appear to be. Very simple scams can work. an executive mailing from their personal account, for example, saying, you need to pay such and such an invoice immediately, I'm out at the customer site. Every now and then, one time in X, where X is a smaller number perhaps than we like, those kind of things work. It's about trust at the end of the day, and putting your trust in something that turns out not to be trustworthy.
So, what is a solution? If you're just like, I don't know, if you're an executive, there's one solution, right? You can lean on your team, but what if you're just an average Joe? How do you navigate these waters?
I think carefully is probably the word that comes to mind. I wish there was an easy fix. And I hate a world where we become so skeptical of everything that we never pick up our cell phones. We think it's going to be a spam call, although that's pretty much where I am today. Or we never click on a link that's ever sent to us an email, because maybe it's not my mum sending me pictures. That's a terrible loss, and that would make me sad. I think it's a matter of common sense. So while my mum, in fact, does send me pictures, here's some cupcakes I made, would be a very believable email from her. She usually doesn't say, hey, Rich, I need your social security number so I can fill out a life insurance form. That's one where I might pick up the phone and say, hey, Mom, do you really need this? Is that really you? So common sense, you know the kind of communications you have with people. You can tell when something doesn't sound like somebody that you work with. And then you should always be a little bit suspicious of things that look too good to be true. Common sense. Keep your machine patched up to date. If you're a consumer, that's really important. It's very easy. It's almost automated at this point. There's no excuse not for doing it. Have a backup. Backups are really easy to do. If you're on Windows or a Mac, it's 20 minutes of your time once a month, and you're set. All these things are just common sense. Don't expect technology to be a replacement for that sort of walnut between your ears that is, very good actually at spotting fakes from frauds.
Now, looking in the future, it seems like threats are getting, much more interesting and audacious. Like, what haven't we seen yet? If we look ahead in the next, 5 years, even 2 years, like, what haven't we seen yet that's just right around the horizon and it looks at, espionage or corporate espionage tactics?
So, attackers will change their MO when their existing MO becomes untenable. Right now, especially when it comes to corporate espionage, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. So in fact, we're not going to see a whole bunch of different approaches because the current approaches work so jolly well. I think at the very high end, we'll see attackers making more use of machine learning and AI. We're already seeing that. I think we'll probably see, some big grand slam sort of breaches over the next couple of years, but that could be done using some very simple techniques. It's difficult to predict the future, and I always want to be careful because there are certain things that attackers could do that would cause me a little bit more pain in my day job. But I think the right answer is really that we won't expect a big shift in attacker techniques until the current techniques fail to work. We're seeing an increase in business email compromise. We're seeing an increase in sort of very targeted, please pay this invoice kind of scams. I think your cell phone's going to be unusable sometime in the next year. It's already got to the point where you just don't pick up. You wait and see if the voicemail was interesting. But I don't see a sort of fundamental shift anytime soon because right now those things are still making money, and for as long as they're making money, the attacker is going to keep going to the same watering hole.
Makes sense. Anything else you'd like to add?
I think there will be some interesting themes over the next couple of years. I think we'll see trust emerging as a quantity that we want to use and spend very wisely, right? So I don't just mean distrust. I don't mean control. I mean extending trust to the right people at the right times in an intelligent way. Because, we talk about models like zero trust, which I think is not the best name for what's actually a very good idea. Zero trust isn't about don't trust anything. It's don't trust something without some evidence. And I think being more sophisticated about trust in the sort of online universe is really smart. I think we're seeing that evolve, right? So if you think back 15 years, we used to get emails about, you can have a Rolex for $19. I think it's a great example that nobody would believe that anymore. Although 15 years ago, people would be like, well, I'll give it a go. Maybe I'll get a nice Rolex out of it. I think we've become more skeptical. It's interesting because I don't think the scams change with the medium. I think they're the same scams, just over a different medium. So doling out trust in more intelligent ways will be interesting. I think privacy is going to become really important as well. We're going to have a really difficult conversation about, is the internet free in terms of content or not? And maybe move towards a micropayment architecture, which people have been talking about for a long time, where you have a choice between a micropayment of cash or a micropayment of privacy. The current model is micropayments of privacy. We're seeing big companies like Facebook trying to pivot on a dime to say, can we become this sort of privacy enhancing company yet still monetize things we know about you? It's possible, actually, but it's a difficult needle to thread. And so I think there'll be some really interesting conversations about privacy that have far-reaching implications for how we use the internet.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you.